Tonight we're going to speak about identities. Although I don't really know what an identity is. And what's curious is in Buddhism, rather than create identities, we're trying to deconstruct our identity. Because our minds kind of automatically create identities that aren't necessarily true or accurate. They aren't who we are, and they box us in. So in Buddhism, it's quite interesting. We're trying to find out who we aren't rather than who we are. I know it sounds strange. We have a few things about who we are, but so often our identities are created and we aren't really who we think we are. So identity exists on many different levels, We have more social identities based on external factors, race, religion, nationality, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, these kinds of things. And then we have more internal identities of how we feel about ourselves, what kind of person we think we are. And the reason that the whole topic of identity is important is because if we misunderstand identities, we get into a lot of conflicts with others over our identity and their identity. I think what's happening in the country now illustrates this very well. Don't you? Yeah? Where everybody is broken up into, well, first of all, we're all getting categorized according to voter blocks. And, what kind of voter block we're in, and so who, how people can present themselves to us to get us to vote for them. Yeah? So we get put in all sorts of boxes like that. And then all the talk in the election season is so much about identities. Who is an American? Who can live in America? What kind of people are worthy of respect, and what kind of people are we free to disrespect? Isn't this what we're hearing a lot of now? And so we're creating identities for ourselves and for other people. Other people are creating identities that they impose on us, and they're creating identities for themselves. And I think that we're all missing the point in all of this. The point being that if you look inside all of our hearts, we're exactly the same. We're simply living beings who want to be happy and don't want to suffer. And that's the common denominator that we all are. And as far as I'm concerned, everything else is non-essential and can, in fact, be very, very divisive. If we identify simply as a living being, not even as a human being, because a human being separates us from animals and gives us freedom to kill animals and eat animals and abuse animals. If we make our basic identity, we are simply a living being, then we have exactly the same status as every other sentient being, every other being with a mind. And what's that status? We want to be happy. We don't want to suffer. And we're all exactly alike in that regard. Not one iota of difference. There may be different things that make us happy than what makes somebody else happy. There may be different methods to gain happiness. But that is more superficial. The basic thing is we're all wanting just to be happy and not suffer. And I think if we have that as our basic identity and nothing more, then wherever we go, whoever we're with, we can feel related to them. We can feel close to them. And this is how His Holiness the Dalai Lama works, and why everywhere he goes, he sees everybody as friends, and why people just, they really resonate with him when he speaks, because he's just a simple living being. As soon as we start creating other identities, then there's a lot of us and them. And when there's us and them, then of course there's favoritism for our own side. And we tend to regard the other side, whoever they happen to be at that moment, as threatening or as competing with us for resources, for happiness. And on that basis, then we get into quarrels and we fight. And so this happens on an individual level, it happens on a global level. I think we would be doing much better in terms of dealing with climate change if instead of seeing ourselves as countries, we saw ourselves as living beings who want to be happy and not suffer, and work together as one body of living beings on this planet to do what is necessary to preserve the environment that we all share. When we start dividing into countries, then it's, well, you pollute more than we pollute, so you should have to cut back more than we cut back. But no, we don't want to do that, and we're a more powerful country, so we're going to push our way through and make you cut back, and blah, 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 blah. And as a result, not much gets done. And yet, we're all sharing this planet, and if we pollute it, we're all equally in trouble. Doesn't matter what country you're in or what color your skin is. We're all equally in trouble if we don't take care of our environment. So, identities. I was just talking with one of the students who was interviewing me before we started here, and she was asking me about that. And so I asked her, and I'll ask you now, what is an American? How many of you here consider yourselves American? How many of you consider yourselves not American? Okay. So, for the Americans, and for the people who don't consider yourself from another nationality, I'll just use American as an example, but you can substitute your own identity. What makes you American? One person said birth. Well, my grandparents weren't born in this country, but they were American. Yeah. What about somebody who's born in this country, but they grow up overseas? makes you American?
I would hope that it would be something about our country that makes us want to be American. Our ideals, our motives. Some of it's not like it used to be, but yeah, I think this is a great country. Therefore,
So our ideals, our values. Yeah. We can say that makes us American. But does everybody have the same ideals and values?
no.
No. And then there's also other people in other countries who have those ideals and values. So it's a little, we can't just do it on ideals and values, can't we? Can we? And we can't just do it on birth.
For me, it's a profound love, because I look at the people that arrived here before me and what they gave up to come here. And today, and I've traveled, around the world, and I see things, and when I come home, I have a profound love for the people here. And for a lot of the things, they're not all good, but it's like giving me the freedom to be up there speaking. And we all have our rights to be who we want to be.
Okay, so she's saying a profound love, is what makes her American. And you referred to all the people who came before you, which could be of all races and all nationalities, who created the country that we live in. And you're talking about rights also, and diversity. So that's part of a kind of shared value, except some people in this country don't like diversity. I love the diversity. I travel a lot, and when I come back to the States and I stand in the line for US citizens, and I see people of so many different colors and clothing and languages, that's what makes me really happy to be a citizen of this country. Yeah? But that isn't really what makes me American. When you really search, when you really evaluate, or at least when I do, the only thing really that makes me American is that I have a piece of paper that says I am an American citizen. That's all. Yeah, I have a passport that says United States of America, and it has my name inside of it. And basically, that's the only thing that makes me American. Sounds strange, but it's really true. And I look at, so it's one piece of paper, a label and a piece of paper that makes me American. And I think of how many people who live in this country, grow up in this country, imbibe some of the values, some of the diverse cultures that we have in this country. But they don't have that sheet of paper that I have. And it seems really strange to me, because they grew up in this country, and they know this country, and this country is their life. But that I can do things that they can't do. And it feels weird to me that when my grandparents came over after the First World War, they could come in the country. Yeah, they, I think, landed at Ellis Island, didn't speak English. My grandmother never learned to read and write English. She learned to speak it, kind of. And they were welcomed into the country at that time as refugees. I don't think they got the refugee status, but in terms of why they came and how they came, they were fleeing persecution. And yet now, other people who are refugees, instead of being welcomed in, they are called, well, you know what we hear them being called. Is that their identity? What makes somebody a terrorist? What makes somebody a rapist? So I think we really have to look at this thing of identities very closely, because we're projecting identities on other people that they don't necessarily have. I find it very interesting that foreigners get the label terrorist, but American citizens who do terrorist activities do not get the label terrorist. White Americans, I should say. Yeah. Timothy McVeigh, is he called a terrorist? The guy who shot up people at the Planned Parenthood in Colorado, was he called a terrorist? The guy who shot all those people in the church in South Carolina, was he called a terrorist? I mean, what are these identities that we are putting on people? And why is it that we project one identity on somebody, give them that label, and then we think that's all they are? They're nothing more than the meaning that we have imputed to that label. And that's what we're hearing in this election cycle, isn't it? You know, you label somebody, you make up a definition of that, you project it on, and that's all that person is. So all of us women are sex objects. And that's completely normal, because it's just locker room talk. And that's okay, because everybody does it. Well, not everybody, but it's okay. It doesn't mean anything. And we are sitting here with that identity imposed on us as women and saying, wait a minute, that's not who I am. I'm not a sex object. I'm a living being with feelings. So please don't see me as a sex object, and please don't think that you have domination over my body. So you see what happens when we make identities and project them onto people? You know, somebody becomes simply a caricature, simply one-sided. They're not a full human being with feelings and creativity and diverse emotions and aspirations, they become one-sided things that I judge and evaluate in terms of me and what makes me happy and what doesn't make me happy. And I judge and evaluate people in terms of what I like and what I don't like. And that's all they are. That's what identities, holding on to identities, does to us. And it sets the stage for all this rancor, all this friction, all this polarization. We look at our Congress. Our Congress is completely immobilized, isn't it? It's passed fewer bills than any other Congress before. They can't do anything because they can't agree on hardly anything. They were very kind and passed a budget so that the government can be kept open until December 9th. That was very kind. They really deserved their salary in Congress because of that. Yeah. Why, people can't cooperate? Why? Identities. Republican, Democrat, Tea Party, liberal, conservative. We put everybody in groups, and then those groups fight and quarrel with each other. Yeah. You're a pro-Trump person, or you're a never-Trump person. Or maybe you go back and forth between the two, depending on the day. Yeah. And it divides families. Whole families are having fights because of who they want to vote for. Is it worth fighting with your family over that? So this whole thing of identities, I think we have to be so careful. When I went to Israel in the 1990s, my background is Jewish. I grew up in America after the Holocaust, but we had relatives that died in the Holocaust. And I became a Buddhist, or what they call a Jew-boo. There's a song they sing at Passover about let my people go, but the Jews never really let you stop being Jewish. The most you can become is a Jew-boo, a Jewish Buddhist. So in the late 1990s, I was going to Israel. The Israelis invited me to go there to teach Buddhism. So on one of the first visits, somebody from one of the newspapers, Haaretz, or I forget which newspaper, they wanted to invite me, to interview me, okay? So I was at somebody's home, and a few of the people who were also more or less Jew-boos, sometimes they were Jews, sometimes like boos, sometimes I don't know what. Anyway, so he was asking me questions, and these other people were there. And one of the questions the newspaper journalist asked me was, "Are you Jewish?" So I gave the old Sunday school reply, which was, well, it depends upon what you mean by Jewish. Is it a race? Is it a people? Is it a culture? This is what I learned. And I said, well, it depends on what you called Jewish, how you're going to categorize me. And one of the people there looked at me and she said, when they come and they want to murder more Jews, they're going to look for you too. Oh. So for that person, the Jewish identity was of a people who were persecuted, who the world turns against and murders. And there's 4,000 years of this history. In fact, we joke about Jewish holidays. They're all the same. They tried to kill us. We won. Let's eat. 4,000 years of Jewish history in those three phrases. But this, it was a very serious thing for this woman. It's like, you're Jewish. And I was going, what makes me Jewish? Well, the Jewish definition is, if your mother's Jewish, then you're Jewish. But I'm Buddhist. But your mother's Jewish. And you eat matzo ball soup, don't you? Yes, but I don't eat it in chicken broth because I'm vegetarian. So it was very interesting. I wrote an article about my experience. This was already 20, 25, 26, 27 years, almost 30 years ago. I called it In the Land of Identities, because I was staying with Jew-boos. Then we went, somebody had a family in the West Bank. We had dinner with their family in the West Bank. Whoa! Totally different feeling. Yeah, those people wouldn't look me in the eye, actually. Then we visited some Bedouins. We visited, one of my friends is very eclectical. We visited some Israeli Arabs. We went into Arab villages in the West Bank. Everybody had an identity. And everybody was imprisoned by their identity. And it's so bad there now. It's just really, which side are you on? Are you this side or are you that side? When I was there, people from different groups talked to each other and socialized. Not now. And so identities like this just divide us. They're excruciating. And yet, what makes us that identity? Yeah. I'm American because I have a piece of paper that says I am. I'm Jewish because they say my mother was. But I say I'm Buddhist. I don't know. Kind of crazy what we do in this world. Yeah. And how when we meet people, the first thing we want to know is, what are your identities? For example, what's your career? Don't we identify people by their career? You bet. And we have lots of ideas. Somebody says, I'm in IT. Oh, we know all about you. Somebody says, I'm in the military. Yeah, we know about you too. Somebody says, I'm a politician, and we go, oh yeah. We know about politicians. Somebody else says, I'm a businessman. Oh yeah, we know about you. Somebody else says, I'm a doctor. Yeah, we know about you too. Somebody else says, I'm a factory worker. Yeah, I know about you. Somebody else says, I work on a farm. Yeah, I know everything about you. It's incredible, isn't it? How we categorize people just on the basis of what they do for a living. And yet, they aren't that. People can change occupations, and they do change occupations. So why do we put people in such rigid categories according to their occupation and think we know who they are based on that? Socioeconomic class. We judge people on that too, don't we? And if you don't have very much money, but you dress like you have a lot of money, people treat you differently than if you have a lot of money, but dress like you don't have a lot of money. Yeah? Socioeconomic class. We know all about somebody depending on, their socioeconomic class, on their education, on their race, on their ethnicity, on their religion, on their sexual orientation, on their sexual identity or gender identity. And just on their gender. We know all about something. Men are like this, and women are like this. Isn't there a book, Men Are from Mars and Women Are from Venus, or something like that? These kind of gender identities drive me crazy. I do work with inmates, and one of the inmates that I correspond with is in the process of transitioning, from male to female. And he's very bright. Well, she's very bright. And we've been having all these discussions over letters about what does it mean to be a woman. Because now she's a woman. And she plucks her eyebrows, and I don't. Yeah. And she has long hair and combs it in a certain way, and I don't. So what does it mean to be a woman? Yeah. She wants to go shopping and wear women's clothes. What in the world are women's clothes? If you're a Buddhist monastic, the men and the women wear the exact same thing. And we have the same hairdo. Yeah, the women shave and the men wear skirts. Go figure. Yeah. So it's very interesting. When you really start examining these identities, what does it mean to be that identity? Okay, so that's one level of identity, more of a social identity. And again, my main point is, when we identify too very strongly with an identity, we make us and them, and then we have conflict and competition and lots and lots of projections and quarrels. Okay? Because it's us and them. And of course, our side's the best one. Why? Because it's ours. There's no other reason why our side is the best one, except that it's ours. Because the people on the other side say, my side's the best one. Why? Because it's mine. They say the exact same words we say. My side is best. So we're saying the exact same words. But when I say my side's best, I'm referring here, I'm not referring to you. And when you say my side's best, you're referring to you. You're not referring to me. Why do we make that kind of division? I used to wonder as a kid why I was born me. I don't know if any of you did. I wondered, why was I born me? And I was aware since I was very young that I had certain privileges and certain fortune that other people on this planet didn't have. I grew up, aside from the usual children are starving in China thing, which we got in my generation. I was quite aware that I had food when I was growing up, and a lot of people didn't have food. And it felt very, very unfair to me that I should have food and other people shouldn't have food. Because I grew up in a country, this country, where we pride ourselves on being fair. Isn't it? Isn't that what justice means and equality and all of that kind of stuff? That things are fair? And yet things were not fair. I had things that other people didn't have. And that wasn't fair. So to really look how we divide people and how we create problems based on these kinds of things. Okay, then to look more internal identity. How do we think about ourselves? What is our personal identity? Yeah. So we might say, I'm a kind person, or I'm an intelligent person. Okay. I'm an athletic person. I'm a musical person. I'm an IT person. I'm a, I don't know, whatever. So we form all these internal identities based on what? Yeah. Some of us identify, I am an angry person. How many of you hold that identity? I'm an angry person. One person is telling the truth. 2 people are telling the truth. 3 people. 4. The rest of you don't have that identity if I'm an angry person? No? Do I have an identity of I am a kind person? Are you always kind? Did you go through today without criticizing anybody? Anybody spend all of today without criticizing anybody? 1 person, probably because you kept silence. Yeah? It's interesting. I'm a kind person, but can I go 1 day without criticizing anybody? And inside, do we really think we're kind people? How many of you say, I'm a lovable person? How many of you feel lovable? How many of you feel unlovable? How many of you are afraid to raise your hand? Okay? We have lots of different kinds of identities inside. And I think, my experience anyway, working in Western cultures, is that many of us have an identity of somehow being not good enough. Yeah, I'm not good enough. I should be better. Many of you are college students. How many of you feel that you're doing well enough in school? I don't see one hand. Yeah. We are so judgmental of ourselves. I should do better. I could do better. Something's wrong with me because other people do better than me. How do I know that? I look at their Facebook accounts. And everybody's Facebook, they're smiling, they're happy, they tell you all the wonderful things happening in their life. And you look at them, smiling, happy, this, that, enjoying the world. And then you look at your own life and you go, those people are better than me. I don't measure up. I'm not good enough. But what's really weird about making that self-judgment is that when we look at people's Facebook, we are seeing a projected image that they are creating, that they want other people to believe that's who they are. Do you think when you look at your friend's Facebook page that you're seeing who they really are and what their deepest feelings are? No, you're seeing some kind of image that they're trying to protect. Because if you think they're like that, then maybe they can think they're good too. So their lives all look spectacular. We look at our life, what's my life? You know, full of problems, full of discontent, not measuring up to other people. Okay. And so we criticize ourselves. But we're not comparing apples to apples and oranges to apples. We're comparing a false image with our self-critical image. Neither of which are realistic, because those people are not their Facebook image. And we are not our self-critical, put down, I'm worthless image. All of those are projections from our minds. And yet, we believe them. We believe them. And my experience in working with people is nobody really feels like they're good enough. Nobody really feels like they're quite lovable enough. And yet, this is a projection that we made up, an identity that we made up, that we created, that we put on ourselves, and that we then believe. But it's not who we are, and it's not true. And yet we believe all these false kind of images about ourselves and live our lives as if they were true. Before I became a nun, I taught elementary school. There was a little boy in my 3rd grade class named Tyrone. He was a smart kid, but he couldn't learn to read because somewhere along the line, somebody told him he was dumb. And so he believed he was dumb. And because he believed that, he had a really hard time learning to read. But Tyrone was not dumb. But that identity that someone created and imputed on him he, as a young child, accepted because he didn't have, as a young child, the wisdom to say, is that an accurate description of me? So he accepted that, he believed it, and then it's caused him problems. I often wonder what became of Taiwan. Actually, I wonder what became of all of my third grade class. And I taught an inner city fifth grade class, and I think of those kids too, and I wonder how many of them are still alive. So this is what identities do, you know? We limit ourselves by accepting certain identities, either that other people have put on us that we believe, or that we have created for ourselves and then we believe. And those identities become prisons that inhibit us from growing, because we tell ourselves, I can't do it. I can't do whatever it was. When I was in school, back in the olden days, the girls learned home ec and the boys learned shop. So I learned how to cook, kinda, and sew, kinda. And I learned shop enough to screw in a light bulb. And that's kind of my limit. I can hammer a nail in the wall to hang a picture. But I was told when something broke around the house, don't try and fix it because you'll only break it more. So between being told don't try and fix it because you'll break it more, and not being educated in shop, I don't have any confidence on how to build anything or make anything. And that image, that self-identity, inhibits me from even trying to learn. So it's interesting to look at ourselves and see how we stop ourselves from growing, how we limit our own ability to reach out and connect with other people because we tell ourselves we're not good enough. So again, these internal identities, what is true about them? If I say to myself, I'm not good enough, and I believe that that's my identity, then on what basis is that said? I'm not good enough because I can't build anything? Because I didn't take shop in 7th grade? So you focus on, I'm not good enough because of whatever it is. Meanwhile, everything else that you're good at, that you know about, that you have passion for, you don't even regard and look at and access that part of you. Because you're too bound up with, I'm not good enough. Without saying, but look what I can do. And look at the talents I do have. And how can I contribute these talents to the betterment of society, to the welfare of human beings, to creating peace in this chaotic world? How can I use my knowledge, my abilities, my talents to do something meaningful for other living beings? And you know what? We don't need to be the best to do that. Because we're all trying to be the best. What what does it mean to be the best? In ancient times, there were many villages, many villages. Each village had a best singer. There were many bests. Now, with globalization, we're not content to be the best singer in our high school or our town. We have to be the best singer in the world. And of course, the best, there's only space for one. So that means everybody else is not good enough. Something's wrong, don't you think? Evaluating ourselves like that? That we have to be the best? Why can't we just be what we are, however good we are? That's good enough. Because however good we are, we have something to offer. We have something to contribute. Because the thing about being the best is, once you're the best, then you have to defend it. The anxiety Michael Phelps must feel. You know? Everybody says, oh, how wonderful, you're the best. How many gold medals does he have? 23 or whatever it is. You're the best. I think he has a lot of anxiety, because once you have that, how are you ever going to maintain it? Impossible. Impossible. You cannot maintain that level. Why? Because he's getting older, and his body isn't going to be able to do what he did before. So does that mean he's not worthwhile? Yeah. Why are people only worthwhile when they're the best? Sometimes, having lived your life not being the best, you've gained a lot of wisdom that people who are the best don't have. Okay, so what I'm getting here behind all of this is, let's stop in making up identities for ourselves and for other people. And instead, let's try to work together as one community to help everybody involved. Okay. So we have a little time for questions and maybe answers or comments.
Thank you for taking the time to be here with us today. My question is regarding what you were just talking about, drive to be the best. Full disclosure, I am a member of the military, and a lot of what we do is based on categorization and labeling and rank and all that stuff, and being the best. Could the argument be made that part of that drive to be the best is kind of what propels us to...
Pardon me, could you repeat that last part again?
Can the argument be made that the drive to be the best is what propels us and what has furthered us in medicine and space exploration and in a lot of these different fields? And I truly am just wondering that, because if there wasn't that internal drive to be the best, do you think that we as a human species would have made some of the progress that we've made?
Okay. So would we have made the progress we would have made if we weren't trying to be the best as individuals? When you grow up in a society that thinks competition's good and you've got to be the best, then that's what motivates you. But it's possible to grow up in a society where people don't think like that. Yeah? To create a society where, what is your passion? What is your talent? What can you offer? What do you want to offer? What makes your heart sing? to have that. And I think that can be just as beautiful a motivation to develop all sorts of things as competition and trying to be the best. Also, I think that we tend to assume that everything we develop is good for us. And I think we have to check that assumption. Yeah, I think we need much more thought. Instead of just, I want to excel, of what is going to be the outcome if I excel, if I find X, Y, and Z, what's going to be the impact on other living beings in the long term? Is that going to be a good impact, or is that going to be a rotten impact? And I think scientists, technology people, everybody who's involved in research, we really need to think, what is going to make a better society? Because I look at, smartphones, for example. Everybody thinks smartphones are wonderful, but I have some doubts. They're wonderful in some instances, but I think in another way, they're making us more and more disconnected from each other. So we need more dialogue about these kinds of things and what their impact on us. Nuclear energy. The scientists had a passion. Let's find out how we can split the atom. And then what has happened because of that? So, yeah, I don't think that wanting to be the best is necessarily the best motivation, or the only motivation.
Detachment being, sorry, is that like the root of suffering, like the attachment to things. But I personally feel like, I guess, more sad and like anxious and depressed when I am not attached to things that I love so much and that love me so very much, be it people, activities, a way of life, but would you say that it like just changes from person to person, or am I just like not understanding the whole detachment thing?
Okay, so you're kind of asking about attachment and saying that you feel very alive when you're attached and you don't feel very happy when you're not attached. Is it the attachment that's making the difference, or is it you're having the object that you're attached to? Because you can be attached to something that you don't have. Yeah. So is it what makes you happy when you have the things that you're attached to? The food you like, the movies you like, the friends you like. Is it having those things that makes you happy? Or is it the attachment? What happens? Because you can be attached to it and not have it.
I guess I was thinking more about like family,
Yeah.
people.
Okay. So, but then, we're attached to certain people, and then due to our attachment, we say to ourselves, when I'm with those people, I feel really happy. Okay. That those people are how many in number? Maybe 5? 5, 10? Okay. So there's 7 billion human beings on this planet, approximately. So that means I'm only going to be happy when I'm with 5 or 10 of them. And when I'm with the other 6,999,999,990, I'm not going to be so happy. So that's limiting us, isn't it? Yeah, that's limiting us. when we say, you know, here's everybody else, and you're just like me, wanting to be happy, not wanting to suffer, and you've all been very kind to me, even though I don't know you, most of you, some of you I know. But you've all been very kind to me, because if you weren't doing whatever your job is in society, I wouldn't be able to live my life as I'm living now. I'm only able to come here because of construction workers who work on the roads in the middle of the night to make the roads. Yeah. I'm here because of the people who made the carpet, and the electricians, and the plumbers, and the people who worked out in the hot sun to make this building. And I'm benefiting from all of their labors. And in that way, they've all been kind to me. And I don't even know who they are to say thank you. Did any of you take active part in building this building? Can I thank any of you personally? You know? Did any of you take active part in driving in making Highway 41 that we drove on to get here tonight? Yeah, you pay your taxes. Then I have to say thank you for paying your taxes because that enabled me to come here tonight. I think it's funny how it's like, I don't want to pay taxes. Whereas taxes are used for the benefit of everybody. Yeah. So don't we want to benefit everybody?
When they use the taxes for that purpose.
When what?
When they use taxes for that purpose, yes.
Yeah,
That's not always what they do.
that's true. But we can write on our taxes the purpose we want our tax money to And we, you know, seriously, when you pay your taxes, you think I'm making a donation. I'm offering something out of the goodness of my heart that can help people to have a better life. That's a much nicer attitude for paying taxes than, oh God, I have to pay Uncle Sam this. And how come I have to pay and you know who doesn't? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I was wondering if you could, if you wouldn't mind speaking to the situation that we have in the Dakotas right now with the pipeline, because you said earlier that the world has to come together to save this planet, and the indigenous people of this planet are coming together from all over the world.
Yeah.
So I'd just like to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I found it quite beautiful to learn that so many, you know, indigenous people from all over are coming together. People who didn't know each other, people who maybe their ancestors were rivals, they're coming together for a common cause. And I was so inspired hearing that. Sunday I gave a talk at a community in Sandpoint, and someone there had just been out to North Dakota delivering all sorts of jackets and warm clothes to the people there. You know, so even people here getting involved in it. I talked to one of our cooks today, and I said, do we have extra bags of grains and stuff that we could send over there? And so we have some stuff. We're going to try and get it to North Dakota. So I think it's beautiful, people coming together for a common purpose like that and coming together peacefully. And I hope the surrounding ranchers put their guns away.
But we have the government that is not putting their guns away as well. That they're to do what they're there for, protect.
Yeah. But I think peaceful protest is something speaks very loudly, you know? And whether you're successful or not successful, the whole thing of people coming together peacefully is very forceful in the world. Very forceful. You know, those of you of my generation who grew up in the civil rights time, you know, what Martin Luther King did was amazing. Yeah, what one person did. Yeah, what Gandhi did when India was trying to be free. You know, it can be very powerful. Whether you win or lose is not necessarily the point, because change takes a long time. We're getting there. We're going slowly. But the inspiration it sets down for generations of people to follow, I think, is very important. Yeah.
Do you think there'll be 15th Dalai Lama?
I have no idea. I'm sure that the Dalai Lama will appear somewhere in the world. Whether he's recognized as the 15th Dalai Lama, I have no idea.
I've heard that not only should, well, you mentioned about dissolving personalities. I've heard that one of the realizations of somebody studying Buddhism is that there is no I to dissolve. Is that something you can help me with, or I don't know? How do I realize that?
Okay. You're here, but you're not here.
I suppose, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What I should say is, we exist. There's a person here, but the way the person exists is not how we think the person exists. Okay? And so I think I mentioned in Buddhism, we're trying to find out who we aren't, because we have a lot of misconceptions, superficial down to very profound, about who we are. And we're not actually inherently, permanently, forever any of those. Okay. Okay, so in Buddhism, you know, is there positive or negative, good and evil, and things like that. I prefer to say there's realistic and unrealistic. There's beneficial and non-beneficial, unbeneficial. There's no concept of, you know, this is inherently evil. I remember one time I was asked to speak in a high school about Buddhism, and one of the students came up to me afterwards and said, do Buddhists believe in the devil? And I said, no. I think that was rather a shock for him. Yeah. No, there's no devil. So he was wondering, well, is there evil? You know? I said, there's no external evil. There's things that create problems. And the things that create problems are mostly inside of ourselves, our own ignorance, our anger, our greed. That's what creates problems. these characteristics are not inherently who we are. They are not the nature of the mind. So it's possible to purify our mind from these kinds of things. So Buddhism has a very positive view of human beings. You know, we all have the potential to become fully awakened. And we really stress somebody may act in a horrible way, but that doesn't make the person a horrible person. Okay? We can disagree with somebody's actions, with their ideas, but that doesn't make them